A lot goes on in adolescence. But let's move on now quickly to different things that happen after adolescence. After you become an adult, there's still some development that occurs. So we're going to walk through three different stages of adulthood. Young adulthood, so right after you pass 18, midlife, and then also your late adulthood. So each of these three stages brings about their own kind of physical, cognitive, social experiences. So we're going to break them down. Physically, in young adulthood, you're at your top. You're as good as your physical status is going to be. It's kind of true. It's sad that you're kind of just declining after you reach your peak, 18 to 21-ish, and slowly physically decline. But cognition, you tend to start to expand a little bit. You move more into that post-formal type of thought where you're less idealistic. You're less like let's fix world hunger, or let's figure out the answer to everything. And you're more likely to just be okay with not having an answer. It depends. I can't fully fix that. It's kind of more just like a realistic sort of mindset. And then relationships are hugely important in this stage of adulthood. You really want to form a solid identity of who you are. If you've developed that sort of solid identity in adolescence, you're more likely to make good judgments about yourself and choosing a mate, the type of person that's going to make you yourself happy. So it's kind of this battle between intimacy, finding that long-term partner, that relationship that you can get intimate benefits from, versus isolation. So maybe you're dating around, or maybe you're living by yourself for the first time, that type of thing. This is a huge kind of problem kind of issue with COVID isolation right now, is that pushback between I want to have close friendships, I want to date around, versus I need to be by myself and isolate. So this is a huge struggle in young adulthood. And then maybe later in this age range, you might start to get married, and you might kind of start to lose that relationship satisfaction a little bit with the birth of your children. Kind of debated. This is an interesting point to include, but basically there might tend to be changes throughout your marriage of how satisfied and happy you are in your relationships. Midlife. So this might be where a lot of your parents are, for instance, right now. This is about 40 to 65. Couple physical changes. So for women, this is characterized by menopause. So when you stop being physically able to reproduce anymore, but also in both genders, things like graying hair. Your cognition, though, remains relatively stable. You might have some kind of thoughts back looking at, okay, what have I accomplished in my life? Am I where I want to be? Am I kind of like the stereotypical midlife type of crisis? You're looking back at the value of your life. Relationships, again, some pretty big changes. You might advance, be promoted in your job. You have different work roles. You might change in your social roles. So things like kids moving out, maybe you're going to start caring for your aging parents instead. So you're kind of transitioning what your role is in society in relation to other people. So lastly, late adulthood. Physically, generally, you're slowly starting to kind of gradually decline in your physical and sensory abilities. But we know that through different studies, things like exercise are important to kind of keep up. Exercise is also really important for things like cognition, to prevent cognitive decline. Although it's said to be relatively stable because only a minority of the population experiences memory loss with dementia. Things like exercise can kind of help delay that cognitive decline. Relationship-wise, if you've ever talked to your grandparents or to an older adult, they seem to have a subjective kind of high level of well-being. They tend to be pretty happy. They're satisfied. They're now at that kind of final stage, perhaps, of their life, and they're just content with the world. Like they're enjoying the small things again, that type of thing. They might have fewer relationships now, fewer close friendships than they did maybe when you were a young adult. And they really rely on that marriage, that kind of intimate partner. People that have been married for a long time tend to pay less attention to past negative events, past personality traits, negative things, and they perceive the relationship as positive, and they're just kind of generally more happy to have that long-term companion, um, and they're just generally more satisfied with their life and with the world. Now, kind of just wrapping everything all up, there's this diagram by Eric Erikson that lists the different stages of psychosocial development, from infant all the way to older adult. On the top, you have the various kind of positive outcomes of these different stages. So you gain some trust, autonomy, you have initiative, etc., as you start to kind of progress through these different stages. However, there's also on the bottom the less desirable outcome that can also occur. So if you're not developing positive trust, you might kind of mistrust people. You might kind of feel some inferiority, not be confused about where you fit in. You might be isolated, etc. So this is kind of a good summary diagram that wraps up what you might be feeling at the different life stages. So these are all normal feelings, and we'll kind of talk about later on as we get to different like psychological disorders and whatnot, how these different developmental stages might result in other kind of long-term changes. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and this. Um, you let me know if you've got any sort of questions, and I'm excited to meet you in the next synchronous session to review this. Bye, guys.